Well, good evening and welcome to the Board of Education meeting for Weld County School District 6 on this very snowy and cold October 26th, 2020. This meeting will now come to order. Will you please join me in standing for our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Crane, will you call the roll for us, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Present.
Mrs. Mash?
Present.
Mr. Matthews?
Present.
Mrs. Mueller?
Present.
Ms. Pappas?
Present.
Mrs. Solis?
Present.
Mr. Talley?
Present.
7 members present.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Well, welcome to everyone. We are glad that you're joining us here. This was not the way that we had intended to conduct this board meeting, but it is a very cold and very snowy day, and so we canceled school, and it seemed like the best option to get everyone that we needed here safely to do this via Zoom. It is one of the byproducts of this pandemic is that we're all much more comfortable in this format, and it does make for a nice substitute. Just very quickly, we are experiencing and seeing the numbers, the health numbers for our community go up, and so we do need everyone's help in continuing school. One of the things that we know about this virus, and there's so much that we don't know, but one of the few things that we do know is it doesn't impact everyone the same, and it has a much greater impact on those who have less, and for those who struggle, and for those that have financial challenges, those that have internet challenges, those that don't always have enough to eat, those that don't have access to emotional supports, and so for those that have the least, it seems to take the most. So we know for our district to go online, to be forced to go online, it creates incredible challenges for the children in our district, and that's not something we want to have to do again. But as I said, the numbers in our community continue to go up, and so we would put out a plea to this community to do everything in your power, everything that you can to help us suppress the spread of this virus, to wear a mask, to wash your hands, to stay 6 feet away, to watch who you come in contact with and how many people you see. We all have to live our lives. We know that, but just please help us when you go to schools, especially, and you're picking up children. Please wear a mask. Just lets our teachers know that you're with them in the midst of this, and you support the work that they're doing. And so we greatly appreciate the incredible work that our teachers and administrators are doing in this district, and we would just ask for the community's help in helping us continue to do this great work, this challenging work in this pandemic. And so those are all the comments that I have tonight. But Ms. Crane, I did not check with you ahead of time. Do we have any public participation?
We do. We have one person, Janet Alcorn, has signed up to speak.
All right. Well, before we continue, just want to remind everyone that we give 2 minutes per speaker, so you have two minutes. And the board welcomes the comments of community members and has dedicated this portion of the business meeting agenda to provide the opportunity for the community to present brief comments or pose questions to the board related to items that are listed on the agenda. A separate time at the end of the meeting is set aside for you to present brief comments or pose questions to the board or other items to the district that do not relate to our agenda. People wishing to address our board can always submit a public participation form by 12 o'clock p.m. on the day of the meeting, and speakers are heard in the order in which they sign up to speak. But we are committed as a board to providing a safe environment where all members of the school community are treated with dignity and respect, and we expect all speakers to exercise their rights to free speech responsibly. And so with that, Miss, and I'm sorry, I don't have the name in front of me. We've had some technical difficulties, but Miss Janet, I will give you 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Pilch, members of the Board of Education, and Ms. Crane. My name is Janet Alcorn, and I've been a member of the Greeley community for 34 years, a parent of 2 District 6 graduates, a former school principal, and I'm currently the director of the Tointon Institute for Educational Change at UNC. It's with much enthusiasm that I speak tonight in support of the naming of our new pre-K-8 school in District 6 in honor of Bob and Betty Tointon. As it is well known, Bob and Betty have been longtime supporters of the city of Greeley and all that encompasses. From the Tointon Art Gallery to the rejuvenation of downtown Greeley, there are public reminders everywhere of the many contributions of this couple. In addition to civic work, Bob and Betty have always supported our schools. Having attended public schools all the way through college themselves, Bob and Betty have always felt that a strong public educational system is key to a strong community and a strong country. Bob and Betty have always shown up for District 6, whether it was offering their home up for a mill levy informational meeting or giving hundreds of thousands of dollars through the Student Recovery Program at Greeley Central High School to support at-risk high school students who might otherwise drop out of school. They're the most generous individual donors to support the overall work and mission of the Success Foundation serving Greeley Evans schools. They've given millions of dollars to support the Tointon Institute for Educational Change, positively affecting the lives of thousands of school leaders, teacher leaders, and ultimately students in our district and in our state. When asked to support efforts at UNC related to the College of Education as well as other university endeavors, the Tointons have stepped up and given generously to make sure that this symbol of education in our community remains strong. But even if they'd never given a cent, the impact of the Tointon family for District 6 would still be significant. Their voices and their presence at everything from school groundbreaking ceremonies to Bob's being a part of the superintendent's business leaders committee, to his work on political campaigns to support education. The voice of the Tointons has been strong and constant and always supportive. While Betty is sadly no longer with us, I know that tonight she is smiling. There is no more appropriate tribute to these generous and caring individuals who represent one of the best American public school success stories than to name our newest school in their honor. It will be a lasting legacy fitting for this extraordinary couple. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Alcorn. We are now to our work session report. So Ms. Crane, if you will give the public an update on what we've been doing this afternoon.
Board of Education President Michael Matthews and Vice President Terry Pappas began the work session with comments and updates from board members and then proceeded to review the calendar of upcoming events and meeting dates. Superintendent Dr. Deirdre Pilch provided an update on the Innovation 2030 strategic plan. Dr. Pilch and legal counsel Nate Fall discussed the legislative priorities with board members. The board briefly discussed community engagement and debriefed the work session to conclude.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. We're now to our approving of the agenda for tonight, and this is an action item that requires a motion from a board member.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Is there any discussion on the agenda? You
Mike,
guys can raise your, raise your hands if you need to. Ms. Pappas.
Did I miss the superintendent's report?
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped over it. My apologies. Thank you, Ms. Pappas. We'll go back to our superintendent's report, and then we'll just remake that motion. Dr. Pilch, sorry, I did not mean to leave you out. I just skipped over my notes.
No worries. I get plenty of airtime. Thank you. I first want to say, President Matthews, thank you for your words tonight, and the plea that you are sharing with our community to wear masks and to social distance and to help us to slow the spread of this virus as much as we possibly can. I will give you a brief update tonight on COVID-19 and what that looks like here in our community and in our school district. We're still holding strong, though, to have schools open, I believe. We did call a snow day for today and made that decision late yesterday afternoon, and then I woke up to sunshine. So maybe the right decision, maybe not, but I think during this time of managing the COVID virus, and then we saw, really, I had probably 10 inches of snow in my front yard. I called it a snowvid day and just decided people probably didn't need to deal with the snow on top of everything else they were dealing with. And now I must say this, it's probably the last snowvid day we will have, because we are just days away from being ready to go fully remote with all of our students and all of our staff, and won't need to actually close schools and have an actual snow day. We'll just need to have a remote day. So I'm glad we got to have a snow day before we move to fully remote, which I think is coming very, very soon. I think we're going to be ready to go remote if we needed to, instead of actually calling a school closure. I just want to remind everybody, we finished the first quarter of school, which means at the secondary level, yes, at the secondary level, that means that most of our students actually completed a semester's worth of work of school content, because as you all know, at the high school level and most of our middle schools did the 4x4 block. And so we've been having kids cohorted and having fewer changes in their day so that we can limit the spread of the virus. And as a result, students did a full semester's worth of work this first quarter. That was a big lift. So kudos to our students. I know some of you mentioned earlier all of the hard work of parents, and how I think it was Ms. Pappas who had talked about having had her own grandchildren and was supervising them from another school district while they were online. And it is heavy work being that learning coach at home while your children are at home learning. So thank you to our parents. And then I have a little sneak preview for you of some really good news. And it's especially fitting since Mr. Tointon is watching tonight. And so much of his work has been about making sure that we get kids to graduation and beyond. So these numbers are not official yet, but it does look like our graduation rate has increased. This last spring's graduation rate will be an increase over the previous spring. And it looks like our dropout rate has decreased. So it looks like our dropout rate has gone actually from 2% down to 1.6%. That is significant. When we started this work about 5 years ago with the Graduates Initiative, we said we want to decrease the dropout rate by half. And we have decreased it by, I think, 52, 54% in the 5 years. So what that means is that the numbers of students who were dropping out in District 6, that number has dropped by over half. So that's pretty exciting. And, I think it's pretty darn good that we increased our graduation rate in the spring, where many students, all of our students and staff were quarantined and were at home. And yet we graduated a higher percent this year than the previous year. So I can't wait till that's official in December, January-ish, and we can do a big celebration about that, because I think that's huge in this time of this COVID coaster that we're all dealing with. So with that, I think it's time to approve the agenda for the night. President Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch. let's go ahead and remake that motion for the agenda. Someone would be so kind.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Checking for Ms. Pappas to make sure I didn't forget anything else. All right, seeing none. Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. We now need to approve our consent agenda. And so if someone would make a motion to that end.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves items as presented on the consent agenda and authorizes the officers to sign any and all contracts.
Second.
Thank you both. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our next item on the agenda is a proclamation for Education Support Professionals Day. Would someone please make a motion for this item? Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, Michael, is there something before that?
There is. I don't see it on my agenda. Again, I'm sorry. I'm not able to access the live agenda. So Miss Myers has me though. So actually, our next item is the Greeley Education Association Starfish Award. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. I have that reversed on my earlier version of the agenda. So, Dr. Pilch, this I will turn over to you.
And I'm going to pass it to our Greeley Education Association President, Andy Lee, and I see her face on the screen, so I'll let her take it.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch. And President Matthews, don't even worry about it, because the fact that you were able to move and find internet and be here with us tonight is amazing. You've really shown how difficult COVID coaster world can become. But speaking of that, Pat Otto several years ago started the Starfish Award, and it's my privilege to bring it back. And it's a very simple award. It's about the little girl, and I'm sure you all know this story. And I can't really see it very well, so I'm going to assume you can. But it's a little girl throwing a starfish into the sea, and it's a certificate of awesomeness with her name and then the poem. And I'm going to take a moment to read the poem, because this really represents Greeley Evans education and what we're doing in our community. So it says, remember the starfish story? A storm had washed up thousands of starfish. A girl picks up one and tosses it into the ocean, then another and another. People watch amused. A man says, little girl, what are you doing? You can't save them all. It's impossible to make a difference. Returning another back to the water, she says, it made a difference to that one. Let's each make a difference with the talent that we've been given. So I had the privilege of visiting Val Cook's PE class at Meeker Elementary a few weeks ago, and this is during full-on COVID, and it was amazing. Whether they were fifth graders or kindergartners, they wore masks. She sanitized in between every round of classes that she had in the gym. And I was lucky enough to be able to participate. We had a place to put our water bottles. We did our running practice. We did our throwing practice. And then we actually played farmers and turkeys. And if you've never experienced that, you are missing a treat. I was so tired of being a turkey by the end of the day. So rather than actually touching, she had created a game where the farmers were able to tag the turkeys by using swimming noodles. So it was a great way of maintaining that 6-foot distance while teaching the camaraderie and the gamemanship that normally comes during PE. The turkeys all had a place to go, and instead of physically touching, we did air high fives to get out of the turkey. I had so much fun, but let me tell you, I was so happy to be on that plate, AKA a hula hoop, by the end of that day. But all those little turkeys were more than happy to let me come out and play with them again. So I was just so impressed with everything that Val had done in her class. She not only continued the education piece of it, which we're used to seeing that type of excellence at District 6, but she did it during a time of COVID. She implemented the sanitizing. She implemented the spots on the floor where the kiddos knew where to sit. She implemented the entrance and exiting so that they could do it safely. And what I saw was just the amazing ability of an educator to continue that educational experience in a very difficult time. So with your permission, I would like to become a permanent part of your agenda, and I would like to bring forth a certificate of awesomeness, Starfish Awards, so to speak, and share with you some of the amazing things that are happening in our district. Because we have a lot of educators, we have a lot of staff that are making that lift together, and I want to bring those people to your attention. So thank you very much for letting me have a little bit of your time on the agenda. I'm very happy to be here. I'll be presenting this award to Val tomorrow at 9:30 with her principal. So this is sort of a preview of something that I hope will become a normal experience for us. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Thank you for keeping us updated on all the incredible things that are happening in the district. And one of the sad parts for us in the midst of this pandemic is we don't get to go to schools anymore, just limiting our children's exposure to adults. We just don't get to see what we did a year ago in school. So it's great to get to hear those stories. And thank you for bringing those to us. Our next item is that proclamation for Education Support Professionals Day that I mentioned earlier. And so this is an action item that requires a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 adopts the proclamation declaring November 20th, 2020 Education Support Professionals Day.
Second.
Thank you both. Before we proceed any further, Mr. Talley, would you be so kind? Are you prepared to read that motion? Do you have that in front of you?
I sure do.
Thanks, sir.
Education Support Professionals Day, November 20th, 2020. Whereas public schools are the backbone of our democracy, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality. And whereas education support professionals are an integral part of the education process, and whereas education support professionals provide a safe and healthy learning environment for students, and whereas education support professionals work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism. Now, therefore, I, Michael Matthews, serving as president of Greeley Evans School District 6 Board of Education, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, November 20th, 2020 as National Education Support Professionals Day. I urge that we observe this day by taking time to recognize and acknowledge the importance of education support professionals in our public schools. Given under my hand in the executive seal of Weld County School District 6, this 26th day of October, 2020.
Thank you so much, Mr. Talley. Is there any discussion or questions from board members regarding this proclamation? Ms. Pappas.
I just want to just say everything that the proclamation just said, but just how much we just need to appreciate. And I do appreciate, I'm sure we all do, the work that our support staff, our support professionals do. And without this group of people, we wouldn't be able to do the work we do. So not meaning to read the proclamation over again, but just thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pappas. Are there any other comments from board members? Ms. Nash.
I think I often share the perspective as a parent, since I am not a teacher or an educator, but again, I also want to reiterate everything that was said, and I so appreciate the many adults that my children get to build relationships with in the buildings, and each one brings something special to their day, to their educational processes, and yes, I'm so glad that we do these proclamations and these celebrations, and even more important when some of the challenges, I'm sure, they're multiplied during this time.
Thank you, Ms. Nash. Mr. Talley.
Sorry, I had to catch my breath before I could speak. I also really appreciate the professionals in the schools. It goes unseen that they go above and beyond. And like Natalie, I can speak as a parent, receiving emails and pictures of my kid at school. Like, if those of you who saw me on Facebook, that picture of my son was sent from a professional at the school of my son losing his tooth at the school, and just super excited and so happy. And so they just go above and beyond with mentoring and really becoming that trusted adult that students can lean on and work with throughout the day. And I'm so appreciative for all our support professionals in our district.
Thank you, Mr. Talley. Mr. Havely.
There are not enough words to thank all the people that work so diligently, and our staff members that are in front of their students every day, the impact they have. Sometimes they never know what occurs until years later. And to each of you, thank you very much. But there are times where people forget our building managers and our paras and our security folks and our bus drivers. And I think that, as the people who are on this Zoom tonight, I hope as they reflect on the people who have impacted their education, that they realize that it's a huge team, and District 6 is a special place, and I'm proud to be part of it, and I want to thank everybody else who makes a difference.
Thank you, Mr. Havely. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Solis.
So as a board member, when it came to deciding whether we should come back in person or at least have that as an option for parents during COVID, one of the reasons I was able to say yes is because of our support staff. I know how hard they work, and I know that we could depend on them. And I know that even though this was going to be extremely difficult and more on their plate, they would go above and beyond to make sure that kids were taken care of during this time of COVID. Having the staffs that we do and the people in our schools makes my job as a school board member, even though these decisions are extremely difficult, I can rest at night knowing that you all are there taking care of our kids. So please know how grateful we are to you. This is a small recognition in something that you deserve in a big way. So please feel this from our hearts and with sincerity that we really, truly are thankful for all that you do every day for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Solis. Any other questions or comments from board members? You can raise your hand in the chat if you. Oh, Ms. Mueller, sorry.
So I think I've always made this joke with Dr. Pilch, but you know, as a parent, I know who really runs the schools, and that's the administrative assistants. And so I just want to say that as a parent, I appreciate so much what the teachers did. I appreciate so much what the administration did, but truly, the unsung heroes are the people that keep everybody else organized and in check, and the counselors and the folks that keep the classrooms clean. And so I just also want to share how much we do recognize your hard work, and we thank you for all that hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. Any other questions or comments from board members? I don't see any. And I will simply echo what everybody has so eloquently stated thus far, that our children, they need more than their classroom teachers. Their classroom teachers are, we have an incredible group of teachers in this district, but oftentimes it is that person they form a special relationship with, somebody in the lunchroom, somebody that they see after school, somebody that's not that classroom teacher that often gives the greatest gift of encouragement and the greatest help to our kids. And so we appreciate all of these people and all the support that they provide for our kids and for this district. Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Higley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our next item of business is the recommendation of a name for our pre-K pre-engineering school. And so this is an action item that will require a motion from a board member.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves the recommendation to name the new school Tointon Academy of Pre-Engineering.
Second.
Thank you all. Well, before we open this up for comments and discussion from board members, Dr. Pilch, I will give this to you to introduce the naming of this new school that we're opening.
Thank you, President Matthews, members of the Board of Education. Per board policy, we did form a committee to make a recommendation to me as the superintendent for the name of the new school. And tonight the committee comes before you all with that recommendation to share that with you all for your consideration. This is a pretty exciting time for District 6. Our last brand new school from the ground up was Prairie Heights Middle School. Prior to that, it had been almost 20 years since we'd actually opened a new school. So in the fall of 2022, we will open our new pre-engineering academy on 71st Avenue within the Boomerang Golf Course. So it won't surprise you that Boomerang was a part of some of the recommended names that came forward. But with that, I'm pleased to share that Mr. Wes Tuttle and Chief of Communications Teresa Myers co-facilitated this committee with several community and district staff, and I'm going to let them take the presentation from here. And I guess I would also invite Mr. Tointon and Ms. Alcorn to turn your camera back on if you'd like to at this time. And I see that some of the committee members have also joined. So with that, I'll turn this back to you, Teresa and Wes.
I'm just moving my slide there. Good evening, President Matthews, Dr. Pilch, and Board of Education. We are excited to share with you the name that we are recommending for you for the new PK8 school here in Greeley. First of all, I want to thank our community for this opportunity to build this new school funded from our recent bond. We're excited to be building a new school, as Deirdre just mentioned, ready to serve our community. As we started this process, we sent out a survey to our entire parent community this spring. We shared the input from that, and I just want to remind everyone that the Board of Education confirmed the focus of the school at our September 14th meeting as a school focused on pre-engineering, with an emphasis on increasing underrepresented populations in the field of engineering. We convened a naming committee, as Dr. Pilch just alluded to. We conducted this work to go through the entire process there. This committee included people from across our community, as well as different district representation, and it was facilitated by Teresa Myers and myself. When we consider naming a school or a facility, we always follow our board policy FF. And on this slide, you can see some of the criteria that we use when considering different names for a school name. As we went through the process, we did eliminate some of the submissions that didn't meet this criteria. Let me turn it over to Teresa Myers to share some additional information.
Thank you, Wes. We had 139 total submissions for that survey. There were 70 unique submissions. And there were many that had multiple submissions. So those ranged from 1 to up to 30 submissions. So the naming committee met 4 times. We met virtually. They were very devoted. We used the shared decision-making process to reach this final recommendation for you. It was not easy. We had many incredible names that were submitted. There was a lot of energy around some of those names, and it was difficult to make a decision, but the committee eventually came together, and using that shared decision-making process, we're able to come forward with a recommendation. So this is the big reveal, although I think we already know. The recommendation for the name for the new PK-8 school is the Tointon Academy of Pre-Engineering. And this particular name did receive the most submissions, but that was not by far the only reason why the committee is bringing it forward as its recommendation. I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the Tointons. Bob and Betty Tointon have been in Greeley since 1963. They married in 1955 and moved here shortly after. And I think, as Ms. Alcorn already eloquently stated, they were very devoted to education in our community. As you can see, they started the Tointon Institute for Educational Change at UNC in 1995, and so far 52 of our District 6 administrators have participated in that institute. Bob and Betty also started the Student Recovery Program in District 6 in 2007, which has resulted in many, many, many students who may not have graduated and reached that pinnacle in their lives to reach it because of the support that program has given them. In 2014, the Tointons also began investing in blended learning at a pilot program at Bella Romero Academy. Mr. Tointon serves on the Superintendent's Business Advisory Council, and as Ms. Alcorn also said, they were strong supporters of the 2016-2017 mill levy override campaigns and bond issues. I think, as most of you know, Mr. Tointon is also an engineer by training. He worked in the construction industry for many years and has been significant in the development of downtown Greeley. But the committee definitely thought that there was a great connection there with engineering, and many spoke eloquently to having that connection of the school being named after someone who was involved in the engineering profession and who can hopefully give some of their expertise to our students as we move forward with this school. So I have a couple of committee members here that would like to speak and that we've invited to speak. And the first is Juan Cruz. Juan actually was the one who made the recommendation to name it the Tointon Academy, and I'm going to let him speak first as to the process and how he made that recommendation. So Juan, if you want to unmute in your beautiful tropical setting.
Okay, there we go. Excuse me. First of all, I'd like to thank the opportunity that I was given to participate in the process to do that, and both Ms. Myers and Mr. Tuttle. It was great. We received all the information we needed at the beginning, getting the lists, updates. So it worked well for us, at least for me. And so I'd like to thank them for the support and the help. It was kind of daunting at first when we saw the 70 plus names. Some obviously, creek down by the river, we knew those were going to go away fast. But as we started going down toward the names, a lot of the names that were on that list were worthy. Some of them community members that know them personally. It became a little harder to go ahead and go through and come down to a final recommendation. But I think everybody contributed well. There was a lot of feeling and emotions expressed with some of the names, and I think that everybody understood that there was some commitment to a lot of those names on that list. But as we proceeded, when we had the next to the last meeting, we had several names there, and it became, for me personally, a challenge between the two local individuals that were left on that list. And as we looked at everything and the name and the emphasis of the school being engineering, I just thought, Tointon, engineer, commitment to the school, and the character of a person, you kind of, some of you may not notice about this, but if you walk around downtown sometimes, and the 40 years I lived in Greeley and 35 of them in the police department, some of them, you get to see people downtown and you see the character of the individuals. And when I see somebody walking down the street, this may sound simple, but it's just a piece of paper on the sidewalk. That person bends down, picks it up, throws it in the trash. That tells me that individual cares about our community, keeps an eye on where we live. And I thought, I've seen a lot of things and I knew about the support for the schools and stuff. So I ended up saying that's my recommendation. And as we discussed it, the group, we did come to a consensus, and that we hope that this is acceptable to the school board, and that you can recognize and agree with us on this.
And Julie Hill is on as well. And Julie, can you unmute and talk for a couple seconds?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to represent this committee. I really enjoyed the process, and I'm repeating some of what's already been said, but hadn't really been through a consensus model before. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot from all of the committee members involved, and I just really appreciate being part of the process. I think in this very crazy year of 2020, the growth and progress we're seeing through these bond projects has definitely been a highlight for me, and hopefully for all of you in our community as well. So I just wanted to briefly touch again on the process. We did have over 70 quality names that were submitted and we had to consider, and it was not easy nor taken lightly I felt by any committee member. So we had a diverse group of members, I think, and some pretty intense meetings. The first one was like a welcome meeting, and then after that, boy, they got pretty intense. So we had great discussion about every single name, and I really felt through that consensus model, everybody was able to be heard and was able to speak, and so that was great. So when we got to the final decision, everybody was on board with that decision. So again, on behalf of the committee, I'm honored to be able to talk about the name we agreed upon. I just pulled out a few words from the nominations that we received that described our recommendations. So I'll read those really quick. Believes in the power of education, instrumental in ensuring equity and excellence in Greeley and Evans schools, exemplary citizens, admired leaders, believes public education is the great equalizer, vision, wisdom, generosity, knows education doesn't have to come in a one-size-fits-all format, takes a stand and does what is right on behalf of all students, iconic, leading advocates for education in our community, have impacted more students in Greeley and Evans than any other couple in the last 30 years, and their legacy should continue in our community for years to come. So our committee agreed that that legacy created by Bob and Betty Tointon is something that should be celebrated and honored. We're proud to recommend the Tointon name for the newest PK-8 school in District 6. During our first meeting, as Mr. Tuttle just alluded to, we learned that the school would have a pre-engineering focus and would draw students from all backgrounds. This school will provide opportunities to students who may not traditionally choose a path in engineering, including women and students of color. So we felt like the name we chose needed to stand for hope, diversity, and be able to promote a dream big attitude among all students and staff. I think the Tointons and everything they've done have provided us with hope, shown that they support diversity. And I saw a quote, I was trying to read up on the Tointons, and saw a quote from Bob that just said that his publication allowed him that American dream. And I think this school will allow many, many children in a great dream that I think that is the vision for this school. So again, thank you for the opportunity. We really felt like Bob and Betty Tointon were a great name to move forward and honor all that you've done in our community and for District 6 students. So thank you.
Thank you for being here, Julie, and Juan, thank you too. And it was not an easy process. We actually had a couple more meetings than we intended to at the beginning because we were having a difficult time, and we are just so honored that there were so many people that felt passionate about the name of this school. And Dr. Pilch, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Thank you to the committee and to those of you who came to speak tonight on behalf of the naming of the school. I'm assuming that as many times as you mentioned that it was hard and it was a difficult process means that you had a lot of good recommendations and that you landed on the best name in terms of the recommendation of the committee. So with that, I will open it up to board members for questions that you might have for me or for committee members or for Teresa or Wes.
You guys just please raise your hands in the chat rather than not in the chat, but just raise your hands, the participants. Ms. Pappas.
Thank you. I just want to say that how much I appreciate the work of the committee. I know that this process must have been challenging, and with the submission of so many names of people, and it's just a very, very difficult decision, I am sure. With that being said, I just want to say how I just feel so honored that the name will be the Tointon Academy of Engineering, Pre-Engineering. I was one of those administrators that had the opportunity to go to the Tointon Institute, and I can tell you that it was probably the most powerful experience that I had as far as being a leader in education. I also had the opportunity to take my staff to the Tointon Institute, and that also allowed us to have just an incredible experience and just so much knowledge and team building. So I thank you for that, Mr. Tointon, as well as Janet. I mean, those were just incredible opportunities. And I also just know that having worked on the bond and the MLOs, the support of that, I'm just grateful for everything that the Tointons have done for our community. And with that, I want to just say that I'm going to approve this 100%. And again, thank you to the committee. So thank you.
Additional comments or questions from board members?
See, Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Hafley.
Miss Mash, we'll go to you first. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing you in the.
It's okay. Thank you. I extend my thanks to the committee, and what an amazing opportunity to get to name something that will have such a lasting impact in our schools. And Mr. Tointon, I don't know that I've ever met you personally, but I am a former business owner in downtown Greeley, and your work in helping to revitalize the downtown meant a lot to my husband and I. We have long loved Greeley, and just really appreciate people who have helped to make it beautiful and strong and improved upon it. So, and then to find out that you're also an engineer, it just does seem very fitting. So thank you very much. And I'm also excited to approve the name, and just glad to get to continue to be a Greeley resident and watch what amazing young people will, be educated at this new school.
Thank you, Ms. Mash. Naming is one of the most important. It's one of the most important things we do, but also it's one of the first things that we do, and it always represents something of our hopes and our dreams, and our aspirations for the future. And so I'm super excited that we are naming this school the Tointon Academy. I know anytime I read about Mr. Tointon, it's always that he's a philanthropist, but I don't think that title quite describes all that he's contributed to this community. He is an incredible visionary leader, has been in this community. It's not just that he has given money. It's how he has given money in such a way that he has led. He's found innovative solutions, and before we had an MLO to fund our technology, and before there was even a Success Foundation to fund our help fund technology in this district, there was Mr. Tointon funding Bella Romero and the work that we've been able to do there. And so I don't know that this community truly appreciates the debt of gratitude that they owe to you, Mr. Tointon. But I hope that they will. I hope that this school will be a reminder that, and a calling, right? That it will call not just the next generation of engineers, but a new generation of visionary leaders. And I hope you are proud of the students that come out of this school. And with that, I'm going to give Mr. Hafley the last word.
Monfort, Farr, Guile, Bond, Rodarius, all selfless community leaders. Each one has given with no thought of return. Their reputation's impeccable because their words always matched their actions. Mr. and Mrs. Tointon, you have been iconic in every component of this community, be it the development of downtown, to being the largest proponents in the history of District 6. Every time somebody says the name of your building, your legacy will live. And I can't think of a greater compliment for you and your wife. Thanks for all you've done for everybody in District 6.
They'll tell you. I think they have to vote.
Are there any other comments from board members? Any other comments from Mr. Tointon himself?
So yes, you can talk now.
Janet says I can talk now. But all I can say really is thank you. Thank you very much. This is a great honor. Certainly not one that you worked for specifically or that I anticipated. But it's too bad that Betty can't be here. But she probably is up there somewhere looking down with a smile on her face, because I'm sure she would be very pleased and honored as I am. Plus, we've got a couple of grandsons that thinks it's cool. So, and I guess that's the language that they use on things like this. But many of those things, whether it's downtown, the Tointon Institute or whatever, the lady that's sitting right beside me, and because I needed help to get a Zoom going, and Janet Alcorn, as director of the Tointon Institute, is the one that does all those things that has caused many of you and those that have participated in it to be so complimentary about what that program does. It's not what Betty and I did, it's what Janet and her resources have done. And John, thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of them. And I have great expectations for this school. And I think that we look back 10 years from now, 25 years from now, that all of you will be able to be proud of the students that graduate from that school. And all I can say is thank you. I don't know what else you say in a case like this, but thank you very much. We appreciate the honor.
Mr. Matthews, I think
Sure, Mr. Cruz. Mr. Cruz, did you have a comment?
Oh, I kind of missed that. I couldn't hear Teresa. Yeah, and I don't want to take away from this occasion here. I don't know if you'll have to vote or not, but before I leave, I just wanted to take, since I'm here, the opportunity to give some kudos to Dr. Pilch, her staff, and the district, the board. I have a daughter who is an assistant principal out in the state of Washington. She graduated from Greeley Central. So obviously Wildcats are deep in our family, even though I'm a Stingaree from Florida, but that's okay. And she keeps talking about the district and the policies and the programs and everything that she starts to look for as an assistant principal, especially with the special ed programs that she's responsible for, which she had for the full district where she's at for a couple of years. She says Greeley, Evans, District 6 just keeps coming up as the source and the location for resources and being on the forefront of whatever she's looking at. So kudos to you all. At least you're recognized out in the state of Washington in the Skagit Valley. So Great job. Keep it up. And thank you, because whatever you're doing, obviously that is benefiting our students here in the district. And that's definitely great to know. Much appreciated.
Thank you much.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Just checking my hands, make sure there's no one else that needs to speak. Thank you, Mr. Tointon. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity thank you for sharing your name with us. And I guess with that, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Ms. Crane.
Mr. Haefele?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our next item of business is the revisions to AC policy and regulations. Not quite as exciting as naming a school, but that's next. And so we need it's an action item and we need a motion to proceed.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves revisions to policy AC non-discrimination equal opportunity, regulation AC-R1, non-discrimination equal opportunity complaint and compliance process, and regulation AC-R2, sex-based discrimination and sexual harassment investigation procedures as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Dr. Pilch, we'll kick it over to you to start us off on these policy and regulations.
Thank you, President Matthews. We did some work this summer around these policies. These policies are a result of the changes in the federal regulations related to Title IX, and very important policies, very important regulations. Lots of additional training is occurring at the district leadership level as a result of this work, to be certain that not only are we in compliance with Title IX, but that we're doing everything we can to make sure our students are safe. And our staff, students and staff. It applies to both here.
Are there any comments from board members or questions from board members? Ms. Mueller.
I just have to say, I really appreciate you put the red line up, Dr. Pilch, because it's hard to always track the changes. Some of the language is very subtle in its change, so that really helps clarify the changes that have occurred. So I appreciate it.
Any other comments, questions from board members? Just raise your hand in the participants portion. Well, I'm not seeing any. Just remind those who are watching that we have plenty of time to review these before our meetings. So not always a lot to discuss. Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Haefele?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our next item of business are revisions to IKF policies and regulation. And so this is also an action item, and we'll need a motion from a board member to proceed.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves revisions to policy IKF, graduation requirements and regulation IKF-R2, graduation requirements demonstration of readiness as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Dr. Pilch, I'll give it to you to guide us through these series of revisions.
Thank you, President Matthews. I'm actually going to ask Dr. Dattery, our Assistant Superintendent of Academic Achievement, to walk us through, albeit not significant or not multiple changes, because these are graduation requirements. I see this as some of the most important work the Board of Education does, is setting our graduation requirements. So Dr. Dattery, I'll pass it to you, please.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch. President Matthews, members of the board, tonight this is an action item, and just to highlight a few of the changes that are outlined in the red line version. There's actually three probably main changes to this, and the first is really predicated due to in July of 2020, our State Board of Education voted to provide flexibility in the implementation of the graduation guidelines that were actually to be implemented in this school year of the 2020-2021 year. So our current seniors have an additional requirement per the graduation guidelines that are going into effect this year. Because of the effects of COVID and the implications of that for our students as they ended their year last year and our seniors this year, and the changes that really have impacted them, the state board voted to provide some flexibility to our local boards of education and include local measures for this year only. And so the changes that you see in policy IKF reflect that addition to our policies to be able to allow the flexibility for local measures to be included this year. And that is reflected not only in the actual graduation policy of IKF, but then in the accompanying regulation that you also have presented to you this evening. The other thing that just very briefly, we took out a minimum number of credits rather that a student can earn for work-based learning. Prior, you can see that it was only up to a half of a credit that students could earn. And in fact, students can currently earn more than that. So we've taken out that minimum requirement and just included that they can earn credit. And then finally, we did revise language in the acceptance of credit from other institutions as well as home-based program, and this is in alignment with what CASB does recommend for us to include in policy IKF. All of these things, these changes, these recommendations being brought to you tonight for your approval was discussed and reviewed and revised from our high school principals as well as our high school counselors in reviewing those changes, and it went through our district curriculum council as well. Just to make sure that we were all in alignment and in agreement with the changes that we bring to you this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Dattery. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Not seeing any, unless I'm missing some. All right. Well, Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our next item of business are some revisions to our JBB sexual harassment policy. And this is an action item that requires a motion.
I move that the Board of Education of Greeley Evans School District 6 approves revisions to policy JBB sexual harassment as presented.
Second.
Thank you both. Again, Dr. Pilch, I'll give it to you to start us off.
Thank you, President Matthews. This policy works hand in hand with the AC policies you previously approved, just approved tonight. This is the actual sexual harassment policy with changes as recommended as a result of the new Title IX regulations. We did bring you a policy earlier in August that simply had the CASB recommendations. This policy has been scrubbed and actually has recommendations of legal counsel at this time. This is the student policy that accompanies the AC policies.
Are there any comments or questions from board members on these policies? Well, not seeing any. Ms. Crane, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Haefele?
Aye.
Mrs. Mash?
Aye.
Mr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mrs. Mueller?
Aye.
Ms. Pappas?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
Mr. Talley?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Our next item of business is a COVID update. And so Dr. Pilch, I believe this is your portion of the meeting, and I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, sir. I have a brief PowerPoint, and then I want to leave the rest of the time for you all to ask questions. I want to share with you kind of where we are in the district as well as in the community. We are looking at several data sources, and the Weld County Department of Public Health and Environment webpage and data dashboard, as well as the CDPHE data dashboard, as well as the state of Colorado. So one of the frustrating things about these multiple dashboards is the data is not the same on any dashboard because each agency uses different dates for reporting their data and managing their data. But what you do see in all of the data sources is the trends and the themes that are popping out in the data, without question. So with that, I'm going to begin my screen share and walk you through this presentation. First thing I want to share is that we have been working with a vendor to prepare surveys and are just about ready to launch surveys. So every parent, whether they're online or brick and mortar or hybrid, will receive a parent survey. Every student in grades 4 through 12 will receive a survey, and every staff member in the district will receive a survey. I think this survey information will be very helpful to all of us to see how things have been going, what is working, what is not working, and what are the pieces that we still need to get in place as we continue to move forward with the school year. You all may recall that back in August, when we made the decision to come back in early August, to come back fully in person, we said, let's get into this a few months and then let's do a survey and see where we are. So it'll be really important that the parents, staff, and students complete that survey so that we have as much data as possible to work with as we go forward in the coming days, weeks, and months. Just an update as of 10:30 this morning on the positive and probable cases. And again, probable is a physician or medical provider has said this is likely COVID, or there's a known exposure and then the major symptoms of COVID to be deemed a probable positive. So as of today, we had 15 students today, not that came in positive today, but right now we have 15 that are currently positive and currently quarantined or have caused a quarantine as a result of that out of our 22,008 staff. We did hit 102 actual positive or probable positive cases today. So we are seeing more actual confirmed positives that are causing the quarantines, whereas, in September we were seeing more probable cases and not as many confirmed. I believe there's a couple reasons for that. One is we are getting more parents to get more children tested. We're getting more staff to go and get tested when they have symptoms. But we also were seeing a slight uptick in cases in Weld County and in the community, just as we are statewide. Also, as of today, at 10:30 this morning, 16 cohorts from 11 of our different campuses were quarantined for a total of 455 individuals. So you can kind of see the comparison. It's pretty similar to where we were on September 14th when I last shared numbers with you around this. I do want to, in full disclosure, tell you that since 10:30 this morning, we've had 2 more quarantines and cohorts go out, and a significant number of students, I think, going out at university, partly because of exposure and partly, I think, probably to cover staff. But both Northridge and University have had additional quarantines since these numbers were put up. And in each of those cases, there are actual confirmed positive cases that are causing those quarantines. So while I have this up, I do want to share something that was a question I got today, which was, how come sometimes the quarantine is a different length of time, depending on, and so the assumption, I think, was that somebody is making a decision on on their own on the length of time on quarantines. That is not the case. Ms. McCarty, our coordinator for health services, is always the one to make the decision on how long the quarantine lasts. She has final say on all of those. But quarantines can last different lengths of time depending on when the exposure is. So follow me on this for a minute. 10 days ago, you were with an individual who 2 days after you were with them tested positive for COVID. So 2 days, it's now 10 days more, or 2 days into that, you were with them 10 days ago. That's all that really matters. You're with them 10 days ago. You only have 4 more days left on your quarantine if you are quarantined for that possible exposure that occurred 10 days ago. Because you were with the individual 2 days before they tested positive, that is in the window for you having to have been exposed. So depending on when you were exposed to the positive individual, that will determine the length of your quarantine and the last time you were with them. So, most often whole cohorts are going out for 14 days, but not always. If we just learned today that a student tested positive, that you were with a student 10 days ago who tested positive, and they haven't been back in school since then, we're going to quarantine you, but we're only going to quarantine you for 4 days. So I know that's complex, but I know there's questions about that out there, and I wanted to be sure people know we're not changing the quarantine date, just somebody at the building making that decision. So I've been sharing this data with you around county data. And so I want to this is last Friday's data because test data was not updated today in Weld County yet. There's no new data. Oh, excuse me, no new data. So, but I want to share, you do see that as of Friday, the Weld County positivity rate did come up over 5% to that 5.44. And as of last Friday, the Colorado positivity rate was 5.84. Now, depending on which data source you're looking at, you will see a Colorado positivity rate anywhere from that 5.84 upwards to over even 7%. The 7-day state positivity rate, according to the CDPHE website right now, is 6.67% in Colorado. We're not seeing anything that high here in Greeley Evans. We're still under 5% in our actual zip codes with a 7-day positivity rate of 4.93%. We do see the cumulative cases continuing to rise at 187.7 cases as of last Friday. This number here, this column here of the trend in case numbers is really is more important than this number here, although we look at both. We want this number, remember, to be under 25%. And so we're not seeing a significant increase there in the last few days. We did see that bump. We saw a significant kind of recession in it. And then we climbed a little bit and then we hit that 10% and then it came down a bit. And so we're seeing that, right now at that 8%, which is still a safe number to be at. That puts us well into the safe area according to the the Denver Health Institute. So I think, we're going to continue to monitor this data as well as the statewide data, as well as other data pieces, particularly around the numbers of cases in 0 to 19-year-olds. So I will tell you that in Greeley and Evans, we're still seeing per day between 0 and the highest has been, I think, 6 cases in 0 to 19-year-olds. We met today with, you remember Cindy Kranagi, the lead statistician for the Weld County Health Department. We met with her and Val Smith today from the health department. They indicated that even they're not seeing cohort outbreaks in terms of that age band of 0 to 19-year-olds. They're not seeing outbreaks in that age band. They did indicate that the state has done some modeling statewide, and that statewide, the age band that has the most transmission in their modeling is the 20 to 39-year-olds. So even statewide, we're not seeing a significant, any significant jump in school-age population cases. And actually what they shared today was that in Weld County, they're not finding any significant jump in school-age population between what we were seeing last summer and what we're seeing now. So I thought that was important information for us to have. But the reality is, guys, the numbers are the numbers. We are seeing more positive cases of COVID in Weld County, and we're listening to the statewide data. We know we're seeing more positive cases in the state as well. So that is really, those are really the pieces I wanted to share tonight. I know you have questions, and I have other pieces of data I can absolutely share as you ask questions. So I will open it up to you all to just kind of see what are the questions you have. And we haven't been together now for a month because we canceled our last board meeting to give teachers that day off, and other staff that day off. So what questions have you had over the last month, and what is the information you'd like for me to put together for you all?
Ms. Mueller?
So I know discussion is happening in many sectors of education. I know it's happening at UNC, and I wonder if it's also happening among your administration about the fallout from Thanksgiving and how we message, the need for people to still maintain the social distance, even with the holidays. And if we have any sort of contingency planning going on about Thanksgiving.
So I'll say 2 things about that. First, that public education is not viewed in the same manner as higher ed, because we don't have, hundreds and hundreds of students who are here and are going to go home to another part of the country. So that's first the most important thing to know. That makes higher ed a little bit different than us when the public health officials are looking at their worry over what will happen over Thanksgiving break or over winter break. Is we know at the college level, we're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of college kids leaving the state and coming back. Having said that, we will have people who leave the state and perhaps even leave the country. We have a week-long Thanksgiving break. That is on my mind and on my heart about, having that whole week means you have more time to travel and probably more time for exposure. So I do think that going into the breaks, we will absolutely need to do a campaign around keeping yourself safe during this time that you're away from school and this time that you're gathering with families. Health officials are concerned about what will happen when families are gathering with other families or other members of their family and they're gathering indoors. The projections right now, as I understand it from the health department today, are that we will continue an increase in cases and that's without accounting for holidays and people changing their behavior. Even if we keep doing everything we are doing right now, the modeling in the state and the county predicts that we will continue to increase in cases through December. Frankly, we are having that conversation at the emergency planning level. We've begun the conversation about, what does that mean we need to do going into Thanksgiving and into winter break? And do we need, we will be prepared. Should it look in the data like it's necessary for us to go fully remote during that period of time and maybe not come back between those two breaks? We will be prepared to do that and have a plan to do that. Frankly, I think my logic on this is if we do determine to do that, well, then you don't come right back right after New Year's. You still need to wait till like January 19th or so to come, 18th, 19th to come back, because you want to give, if you're really worried about that holiday and the risk of exposure, we're going to want to give 10 to 14 days after probably New Year's Eve kind of time before we bring people back to school. There is still, every group I'm with and every health official I talk with, the greatest worry is still the adults and what the adults are doing. And there's still a lot of energy around feeling like kids being in school is really right now the safest thing to do, because they aren't out with going from relative to relative or, they're just not, they're cohorted when they're in school. So they're, right now, that looks like the safest place for students and for staff to be. Having said that, we've got to keep watching the data and we'll respond to the data appropriately.
Ms. Solis.
I have a few questions. Now with the colder weather coming and we're having to be indoors more, what does that look like, and any differences in our protocols? And then I know we also had like mask breaks that kids could do outside. What are we doing instead for them? And then I have some other questions after that.
So most days we still go outdoors. I want to say that. Now we can't go hold classes outdoors like the music classes and things we were holding outdoors. It is getting too cold for that. But most days we still have recess for K through 8 kids. And so most days they will still have opportunity to be outdoors with masks off. There are mask breaks in the classroom. And we've given teachers guidance on that and given them best practice. Some of the protocols have changed since August. So Mr. Tuttle and Mr. Asmus have been working on a presentation to put out to principals that they can share with teachers around what are the things that have changed. So for example, we had middle schoolers need to be 6 to 10 feet apart. They need to be facing forward and they need to stay away from each other. The guidance now allows for middle schoolers to actually work together. We can turn 2 desks together and we can work together. We want to still keep that under 40 minutes of a cumulative time in a school day. But some of those pieces have changed. We still do not have clear guidance that allows for, well, we do have guidance. It's not favorable guidance for vocal music and instrumental music. Right now, the guidance is indoors, no more, I think it's 8 or 10 students playing at the same time, and they need to be 12 feet apart. Those are pretty strict guidelines, but we can do some of that. And so a part of this piece that we'll push out this week, 2 principals will make those requirements really clear on what you can do around music performance, band performance, vocal performance, instrumental performance, theater arts performance, and what they're allowed to do. I mean, there's still, we're still under significant restrictions in terms of the number of students who can be playing an instrument, a blowing instrument, or who can be singing at the same time in the same room, and the amount of distance they have to have. We're making plans for that, but there are a lot of restrictions, and it's frustrating.
And then my next question is, what's the district conversation around flu shots for staff?
We offer flu shots for staff. They were offered free of charge. Staff had to sign up in advance. I'm sure we're still offering them, I would guess. But we've been offering flu shots since early September for staff, free of charge. if you're on our district insurance.
And is there any?
I don't know, do they have to be on district insurance, Megan, for flu shots?
So for them to be free, yes, they do. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
For them to be free, yes, you have to be on district insurance, but most insurance companies cover flu shots at no cost.
Yeah.
Okay. And are you encouraging people, or what's the information around that right now when it comes to having flu shots and being around for COVID? Is it, advantageous? I heard some people saying wearing masks is actually, better. What are you hearing?
We're encouraging flu shots. Our wellness committees at our sites are pushing out information on vaccines. We are encouraging flu shots. And every presentation I give to staff, I've encouraged flu shots.
Okay. And then last question, what's the availability of tests? Have you noticed any difference as far as having access to the test and the turnaround time?
We're seeing people be able to get access, and we're seeing a pretty good turnaround time. We're not seeing a barrier there of any significance. The big thing has still been getting people to go get tested, getting them to go get tested, that willingness. But there's lots of possibilities for getting testing done, and we're seeing a 2 to 3 day turnaround time typically on test results when we're waiting to hear on a staff member or a student who's gotten a test.
So still 2 to 3 days?
Yeah, at most. Mm-hmm. Typically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so what's hard about that, Rhonda, you're right. Like if I got sick 2 days ago and I waited 2 more days to go get my test, I'm now at 4 days. And that means we likely are going to quarantine everybody you exposed until that test result comes back. So that's why you'll sometimes see that a group gets quarantined and they get to come back, because then that person will get their test result back and it's negative. We can bring the cohort back. We don't bring that individual back, but we can bring the cohort back.
And has the county given you any updates on contact tracing? Have they increased staff, or do they have more funds going to that? What's happening at the county level?
I haven't asked that question lately because we're doing most of our own contact tracing, as are most school districts, quite frankly. They did increase staff, I know, back in August, but I haven't asked again since August. When you're dealing with hundreds of, we've got 400 some kids out. We are much better prepared to do the contact tracing on those folks than 5 people at the county are. Because I've got every building has people who are following this.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Elise. Mr. Talley.
If a student or if a staff member becomes ill and is unable to work, they receive a X amount of days through CARES Act. Is that correct?
14 days total.
So with CARES Act expiring, if it does not get expanded after December, do we have a plan in the district to?
So to be fair, Ray, it's actually not CARES Act. It's just a requirement of the CARES Act. They're district dollars. We're paying for them right now because we're required to through December. So we'll see what happens with legislation after December and what's going on with the virus. We don't. Megan's turning her camera on. She may have new information I don't know about, huh, Megan?
I do have some information. So there is a state law that was passed that would provide sick leave for all employees. And depending on, I think, how long this pandemic lasts, there's different levels in terms of the number of days of sick leave available. So there is a provision in state law starting January 1st.
So the state is making a plan for what happens when the federal requirement runs out.
Yes.
Great. Megan, will you bring that to all of us at emergency planning on Thursday so we can learn about what that is?
You bet.
Thank you.
And then my other question, not necessarily directly tied to this, but related to COVID, with businesses and such, with them being able to extend their property tax payments, how will that affect the school district? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Ray, we expect it will impact our revenue. this is Megan's area again. But we've already collected a substantial amount of our taxes. Megan, do you want to talk a little bit about the extension on the taxes?
Sure. So what we have seen is that for the most part, most people are paying and mostly on time. We do have some taxpayers that are slow to pay, but they are eventually paying. So what we normally would have collected, say in June, we collected in August. So, there's a little bit of a lag in terms of time it's taking to collect taxes. There is a couple large taxpayers that are in the midst of bankruptcy filings. And so that's really where we are feeling it as a district in terms of not being able to collect property taxes owed. So that's more of an impact on the district rather than this extension of time to file.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Mesh.
I was just going to give a little information about flu shots if you are interested. Definitely, we are recommending the flu shot. It does not protect you against COVID, but it would obviously be better to only have one infection and not two. So get your flu shot. Also, the flu and COVID have nearly identical symptoms. So if you're going to try to prevent your child's class from getting quarantined when they have a disease that looks just like COVID, get them their flu shot. Sunrise is doing flu clinics Tuesday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. for $25 if you don't have insurance. Otherwise, they'll bill your insurance. Yeah, I was going to talk about that. And then also, I don't know if you all saw, and I don't know what people think about it, but Colorado is rolling out a software that helps with contract tracing as well. It's like been automatically updated to your Apple phone but you have to like opt in. And then I think it's an app for other devices. And I know people have concerns about privacy and things like that, but it somehow like puts out a ping off of your Bluetooth so that if you were, say, eating at a restaurant and someone at the table next to you tested positive, you would get an alert that you were exposed. I don't know if it'll be helpful, but just FYI, that was, I thought that was interesting. And I was wondering about the survey. Were we able to create the survey in multiple languages?
Teresa, where are we on translation on the survey?
Sorry. We don't have the finalized survey yet, Dr. Pilch. We've got the final draft in your hands, so we need to finalize that. And then, yes, we will provide it in multiple languages. We just haven't had the final yet to have it translated.
Any other questions from board members? Not seeing any hands on our participants list. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Pilch. Thanks for keeping us updated on this.
I'll share that Dr. Battery texted me that Union Colony also had a cohort go out. So, but we'll probably have some come back tomorrow. We'll get some back also probably.
It's the world we live in.
No. It is the world we live in. I guess the thing I want to say that came out at DAC the other night is that when a cohort is sent home, that is most often, almost every, I want to say every time, because one person is positive or a probable positive, not because the 38 people who were sent home are probable positives. So, it's really to slow the spread. We think today we have our first possible case of a student who may have gotten COVID in their actual cohort. But up until now, we have not had any indication that COVID is spreading within our cohorts. And that after kids are quarantined, staff and students are quarantined, they're not getting sick during that quarantine time. So that tells us that the distancing, the mask wearing, the hand washing is working.
That's pretty incredible. All this time, and we're looking at possibly our first transmission in a school.
Well, in a cohort.
In a cohort, yeah.
In a cohort, yeah. I'm pretty confident we've had transmission from staff to staff, at least at one of our high schools right now that has some staff out.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Pilch, and thank your staff and our teachers, all the work that they're doing. I know this is difficult work right now.
Indeed it is. They are working hard out there. Yeah. Thank you.
Next item is an Innovation 2020 update, climate and culture. Priority 1, that's our cultural proficiency. And Dr. Pilch, I'm going to give it to you, but I see Dr. Dattery, his camera turning on, so I imagine you're going to give it to her. But yeah, give it back over to you.
I'm going to do that very quickly because it's getting late, and you guys have been here since 4 p.m. So Dr. Dattery and Jessie Tiarina will take lead on this update for you all.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch, President Matthews, and members of the board. It is our pleasure to be able to share with you our update this evening on climate and culture, and it is specifically on priority 1. I believe, Jessie, you've turned your screen or your camera on as well, and the two of us will be sharing with you this update this evening. As you know, this is predicated on our mission and our vision of our district, and one in which you've all put forth for us to follow, and we're very pleased to be able to say that this really is an integral part of us carrying out our mission and our vision in the really what embodies the culture and climate work. And that, as Jessie and I were preparing this for you this evening, we talked about how each one of these values and beliefs is very integral in the work of culture and climate work, cultural proficiency work in our district. And then not one of these is really more or less important than any other when it comes to this very important work that we are engaging in. And so we really want to lift each one of these value and belief statements up as we talk through this evening's update to all of you. We know that all 4 of these are important in our work as a district, all 4 of these goal areas, now our focus areas. But tonight we really share with you the culture and climate update. Inside of that, it is priority 1 is ensuring cultural proficiency throughout the system. And there are 3 outcomes that we monitor when implementing this particular priority area. We'll talk about these 3 outcomes later in our presentation. And throughout the presentation, we'll also give you updates on the actions that are a part of each of these 3 objectives, very specific objectives. The first one is really around cultivating that sense of belonging, and that is for all of our students and our staff, so that they really know that this is a place of inclusivity of who they are and how they show up at work or at school. Objective 2 is really thinking about what are those continuum of services that ensure that we are providing access and equity to all of our students in the learning environment. And then objective 3 is really that of providing that high quality professional development opportunities. This work really is, it's important work, and it is that of which we are engaging in on an ongoing basis and have been for several years now. And this year really being pointed, and in the next couple of years, around the additional professional development opportunities to really engage deeply in this work. With that, I'm going to actually turn it over to Mr. Tiarina, our Director of Cultural Excellence and Family Engagement, and he's going to share a few of the actions that we've been taking this year, particularly as we kick off this work around school equity teams. So Jessie, I'll pass it off to you, please.
Good evening. Glad to be here. Nice to see everybody. And it's nice and warm in the home, right? So that's a nice thing also. So I'm super excited to present to you today around the work we're doing since we first originated with the district leadership team and built capacity with our district leaders. Now we're moving forward into how does it look like building capacity within the school internally. One of those actions is through school equity teams, which is essentially made up of internal stakeholders, at times external stakeholders. one of the commonalities among our members are that universal passion and courage that they have to engage in transformational change. And as you continue to look at some of the work that is entailed about the school equity teams, it's really truly identifying barriers that exist within the school system for particular student groups, and not only identifying those barriers, however, looking at authentic and tailored approaches to begin to remove those barriers. The overall charge of our school equity teams, again, is really in alignment with what our mission is as a district. We are looking at engaging in really that true self-examination of the leader. What does it look like to have a courageous leader, to look at and show and model behaviors that exhibit what really anti-racist education looks like? And also, to really have a think tank, a collective learning community in which, those of common knowledge and common passion can really work with each other and develop their own cultural competence and their social political consciousness within the spectrum of education, and really identify, how do we address those racial achievement disparities that exist within our system. Another thing, again, as I said earlier, it's really truly to examine those educational barriers authentically, to bring in stakeholders and bring in experts that are representatives of the student membership that exists. And almost always, of course, is going to be that our overall goal is for that academic achievement piece, to where we achieve, high levels of success for all students, despite, their own realities and where they're coming from. One of the things that we are super proud of this year is Equify, which is a 5-part series in which we truly look at how can the district support school equity teams and have a trainer and trainer concepts to where they begin to build capacity internally. As you know, one of our goals is to achieve 100% cultural proficiency within the system, and this is a very strategic avenue to do so in a rigorous manner. We've already completed part 1 and part 2 of Equify, in which an average of 70 participants joined us in those efforts. One was a 7-hour session on a Saturday. The other one was a 2-hour session right after school on a Thursday. And it's just amazing. I'm not sure many districts are doing this kind of work at this level. Last year we were looking at a district equity team of around 7 folks in our district equity team. And this year I look at it in the sense that we have an equity team that's around 70, 80 participants large. So that's very inspiring for me to see that. But most importantly, I'd like to bring along a couple of our equity team leaders in this space right now to help you kind of bring some more understanding of really what a school equity team looks like, what they're doing. So I'll go ahead and start with the West folks, if you'd like to join us in on this presentation, Amy and Leah.
Hi there, my name is Leah Sanford. I teach social studies at Greeley West High School. I am also one of the members of our equity team. Right now, we are a team of administrators, counselors, teachers, and paraprofessionals. We are looking to add students, and I was asked to briefly just talk about some of the things we have done as an equity team. And so we developed a statement of equity as a staff. We have also been given time during professional development days to talk with staff about race and about equity. We've had opportunities to listen to students and their perspective as current students at Greeley West High School, and after they leave our school and they think back on their education. Over the summer, we participated in a staff-wide volunteer book study by Dr. Kendi, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And once a week, we met over Zoom and had some tough conversations about what does racism look like at Greeley West High School, and how can we be better for ourselves and for our students. And just this year, every staff member participated in more discussions around race and inequity, and our charge as staff members, as teachers, was to all come up with a goal around equity and being more inclusive and culturally responsive. So we have a lot of work to do, but it is necessary and exciting work, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leah. I believe either Nathan from Chapel or Amy. I'm not sure if Amy's still on the call. If not, Nathan, please join us.
Hi, everybody. So as Jesse said, I'm over at Chapelo. I'm a 4th grade teacher. And we're actually in our 2nd year of equity implementation, intentional equity implementation. And so our school equity team is made up of representatives from basically every workspace and grade level. And then we have tried to make our equity team as diverse as possible. We struggle with that because our staff isn't very diverse. We're very white staff. And so pulling in stakeholders that are people of color and people from the LGBTQ plus community is a challenge that we're facing. But we started last year just with some intentional training around implicit bias, colorblind racism, and issues of equity to start to build a base, because our stated purpose was to raise the equitable consciousness of our staff. So rather than just addressing curriculums or what books we're reading with our kids and stuff like that, we thought, well, let's address the hearts and minds of our teachers. And then when we're all looking through an equity lens, that improves the quality of our education for all of our students. And so a lot of last year was professional developments and kind of setting a base and creating a tone of really being conscious about who we are and how we relate to race and how race affects our students. And so moving into this year, it's all about building capacity, like Jesse said. And so what we've done is I've now reorganized our equity team into several different studies. And so I reached out to our equity team members and asked them, what are you reading? What are you watching? What are you doing to kind of build your consciousness? And so through that, we came out with 4 groups. We have one group that's doing film studies, where they're watching a film study that gives some insight into the race experience in America and things like that. We have one that's looking at modern segregation. We have one that's reading The Hate You Give as a book study. And then we've got one that I'm especially excited about because this was always a goal of mine. And they're going to start to explore the intersectionality of race and the LGBTQ plus community. So gender and sexuality and how that intersects with race, and starting to explore that with our students as well. And so these smaller communities are going to meet every PD day or once a month is kind of what we're shooting for. And so that's what our program is this year. And I'm really excited about it because now where it started with just this very nuclear group of me leading a few other people in developing these programs. Now I've got 14 equity leaders just in our school. And then I'm hoping that by the time we're done, everybody on our staff considers themselves an equity leader. But yes, I'm very excited that we're starting to expand into the issues of gender and sexuality, because I think that that's so important to talk about too, especially where it intersects with race, and how race can be such a compounding factor for those that are also outside of that heteronormative expectation that we tend to hold people to. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nate. That's a perfect segue into one of our next actions, which is around social emotional learning in alignment with our SEL programming and, of course, I-2030. We're really looking at how do we address bullyism as well as racialized trauma. As you know, these are complex scenarios and complex concepts. So we're really looking at, as Nathan said, is what are the intersectionality of realities that we have within our student membership and our families as well. So we're really looking forward to that. These are going to be a collection of lesson plans around 2 weeks long, and they're going to be by education level. So there'll be opportunities for youth in elementary, middle school, and high school to be tailored just for that area of learning and that level of learning. They're also going to align with our social justice standards. And what's been great about our district is everybody says we have internal experts within our system. And that's such a great thing, to where we have folks that are educators that not only have lived this experience and have a passion for this work, however, they've also had a formal education and background around this work, which has been really essential to our growth in supporting our equity teams. Other actions include, of course, our continuous strong partnership with charter schools. Working with them has always been a pleasure. We've worked together in recommendations, book studies, just reaching out with folks and having a think tank, really, essentially, and always leveraging each other's expertise. And also, it's been great because we can be vulnerable together and show courage together with our charter schools. Recently, we have launched our support services equity team. We are so much looking forward because we have a great diverse members in this support services team, not only around color or LGBTQ, but also around the facilities piece and the departments piece. As you know, these are essential parts of our system. Folks that feed our folks, folks that drive our folks, folks that socially support our folks. So it's great to have other stakeholders involved in building capacity across the system. And again, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to this year is that we have added some perception data solely and tailored around race. 14 additional questions are going to be included in this year's Panorama survey for our students. And we are super excited because we're going to begin to formulate really intentional data-driven dialogues and discussions with stakeholders across the system as we begin to gather this data in this coming year. When we're thinking about outcome data, again, as you've mentioned, and you can see through my passion, that we're so super happy about our school equity teams that we've achieved a school equity team at each of our schools. And I look forward to having a school equity team at the Tointon Academy of Pre-Engineering. So that's the next one. So we're going to have to add that one here to our ledger here pretty quick. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we also have support services equity team that is launched. We've achieved that goal. And the next goal, which is going to be, I think, an ever-working goal, right? You know, by 2019, we had wished to have all classified staff and certified staff participate in culturally responsive training. Well, I think that is a lofty goal. I do believe that we were going to eventually creep up there closer and closer. We have strategically put in play new professional academies, follow-up trainings, and nevertheless, you know, we can see there at 1920, we have 84% of our folks trained, and we've eked up closer to about 86%, and we're continuing to eke up. But these are rigorous trainings. These aren't just, you know, an article here and an article there. No, this is some really rigorous work, and we understand that onboarding sometimes is really tough to address when there is times like COVID and mobility among educators. But nevertheless, we're going to be working towards that 100% goal. And again, you know, one of those things that I am assured of knowing, having lived this experience, is that although you might get to 100%, it doesn't truly equate to equity as 100%. So it's an ever evolving work, and we're going to work towards that 100% goal. Another thing we're really proud of is our onboarding for our new educators through our new professional academy and follow-up mentorships and induction programs. We've been able to reach around 94% of our new educators with some really rigorous training. And what's great to see is that a lot of these folks are also a part of their school equity team. So they're getting a double dose of equity at all times. So we're super happy about that progress data. Recommendations for 2030, again, is going to be tailored support around school equity teams, identifying and understanding disproportionality of student data. So we're really going to look at data, you know, when you think about that perception data around race, also is what does data look like through an equity lens? You know, how are we truly looking at it authentically, but also developing structures to address some of the concerns that we have. Other areas that we're recommending is really having a strong, safe space for student voice. As Nathan said earlier, also is really having and creating critical awareness around intersectionality, LGBTQIA, and other things across the gender spectrum. One of the things that we just recently did is got together with UNC, and Stephen Lovelace will be providing a training around LGBTQIA in November. So we're super excited that our social workers and our counselors are going to be receiving that training and going to continue to align to our SEL programming. Other things, again, is going to be really looking at how can we review and revise our practices and policies that support equity across the system. What does that look like to truly know that we are truly multicultural and not multi-holiday? You know, how do these proclamations look like? How are we ensuring that we're not only communicating with our families through multiple languages, but also partnering with them and having high engaging activities and adult education that's reflective of the true needs? one of the things that COVID has revealed is the essence and the need for home visits. And one of the things that I like to discuss with our folks is to ensure that our home visits are not home invasions. So where is our knowledge around cultural mannerisms? That's another area where we're going to be given insight and critical awareness around what does it look like to engage and partner with cultures and races other than our own. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is going to be our instructional practices. What does culturally relevant pedagogy look like within the system? We already have 2 classes in our high schools, Introduction to Mexican American Studies. How does that look to begin to increase not only courses that are offered, but also cultural relevancy within the instruction that already exists within our core classes? As Nathan mentioned earlier on SEL and gender, we're looking at diversity and inclusion is also a huge recommendation into I-2030. And the continuance of anti-racism education training is always going to be something at the forefront of the work as we move forward.
To round out these recommendations that we bring to you this evening for 2030, the next one is really around providing intentional support for student support services equity team. So as we mentioned to you earlier this evening, we're very, very proud to be able to really launch and get some synergy with our support services team, and being able to broaden the work that's happening in our schools to all of the various departments across our system that support our students, but really thinking about this through the lens of how can we support our adults in these support services groups so that they have that same sense of belonging, so that they feel like this is a safe place and it is a place they want to be working and being in daily. So a few of the things that we will be really focusing on is that of implicit bias training. And we heard a little bit about that work happening in some of our school equity teams as well. And so really bringing that to our support services teams, some safe zone training and what that entails for our folks in the workplace, and really going deeper into that cultural proficiency continuum and having very thoughtful and conscious conversations with our folks in these various departments on what that looks like and in, as I mentioned, the work environment for them. And then finally, really digging even a little bit deeper into the human resources work that is happening across the system and implement further practices and policies that support those culturally responsive behaviors in the HR arena. And so one of the things that has already begun and will continue as we go into Innovation 2030 is really thinking about how can we train hiring teams on those hiring practices that are culturally proficient, ensuring that, as we heard, the work that Leah spoke of, as well as Nate in the school equity teams, and knowing that this work will continue throughout all of our departments, really bringing that into the space of hiring, bringing those members that have that deep training and passion around that work, and really bringing them into those hiring teams so that we're being conscious and thoughtful about our hiring practices from the very beginning. And then once we have these folks hired, have all of our people hired, really giving some intentionality to having that mentoring and intentional actions that will retain specifically our staff of color that we've heard over the years that we are not doing as good a job as we need to be doing in that area. And so really thinking more thoughtfully about what are the practices and the policies and the things that we need to do from a human resources aspect that will continue to support all of our staff across the system, and particularly our staff of color. So with that, Jesse and I just want to thank you for your time tonight. I know it's been a long evening as we have shared with you many different things, but we're really pleased to be able to bring to you this culture and climate update, share with you a little bit about what we've been doing over the past few years and certainly this year, and then looking forward into what the work is as we go forward. So we'll open it up to any questions you may have, or if Dr. Pilch, you have anything you'd like to add as well.
I'll just say thank you for this update. I know that it's late in the night, late in the day for us on a board meeting, and yet seeing this full report with your words behind it, the two of you, thank you. Thank you for your energy behind this and your work with this. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch.
I think Mr. Hafley has a question.
No, I just have a comment. Jesse and Stacy, as always, I appreciate your incredible leadership and passion for this. But Leah and Amy and Nate, this wouldn't be possible without the quality leadership among our staff and being incredible role models for what you believe is correct for our students and staff. And each of you should be incredibly proud of your efforts. And I know that everything or all your hard work will pay dividends for everybody in the system. And each of you should be very proud of yourselves. So thank you.
Ms. Mash.
Thank you very much for the update, and I'm glad to hear from folks who are in the equity teams. It sounds like we have a really great framework at every school. I was curious, I'm excited to see the recommendations for 2030 and kind of more specific and really delving in. I was curious about measurable goals. I think Ms. Sanford mentioned that they're really trying to delineate some goals, and I was curious. I mean, some of the work, I guess, just it seems like it is hard to measure. So I was curious about measurable goals and how the equity teams determine the goals. Is it by school, or is there some sort of guidance as to what we would like specifically accomplished through those equity teams? Kind of how does it directly impact the students? Something I was just sort of thinking about is how like Chapel incorporates art into nearly every subject. Wouldn't it be fantastic if anti-racism equity teaching was in every subject as well? So I was just curious about, I guess, the goals and the purpose of each team and how that's fleshed out, and if you have some ideas of some other measurable things.
Stacy and Jesse, why don't you guys take that kind of high level, and then if the school folks have some more to add, let's let them do that.
Well, Natalie, essentially it's the school equity teams to really look at what needs to be addressed at their school, and then the goals develop from there. But as you know, it's really tough to measure goals around equity. A lot of it's going to be qualitative. I think that's why, our charge and looking at I-2030 around student voice. What are the students telling us? What are our partners? What are our families telling us? So that panorama survey around race, right, those 14 additional questions are going to speak volumes, and how we begin to be more informed of really how do our students find a sense of place when they're looking specifically at the color of a child's skin. So, I really am optimistic of what we're going to hear, but also of the goals that we can attain by what our students are saying. But I think most importantly, when we look at how we measure the work that needs to take place, it's showing up every day, right? Showing up for our kids with love and grace every day is going to be a goal that we hope to attain on a daily basis. Thank you for such a great question, Natalie.
Thank you. I don't think I would really add anything more to what Jesse said. I think I wanted to really punch home that equity survey asking students is going to be it's certainly a step in that direction of gathering the data that is really going to tell us on the receiving end is the work that we're doing as a system making an impact on students in a way that is meaningful for them. That said, there are different things. I don't know if Leah, you wanted to add any more, or Nate on any of the school goals. Those really are dependent on the things and the activities and the ways in which they are engaging into this work. And so we are really relying on them to kind of lean into this and examine the practices and the things that they have in place, and then measuring as they focus on these different aspects in their buildings, measuring those as they move forward in this work as well.
But Jesse started out talking about the disproportionality. I mean, when this work is really happening in schools, what you begin to see is your school data and your district data move around student achievement, yes, around student achievement, and around attendance, around student discipline, enrollment in advanced placement courses, numbers of students identified for gifted and talented services who are children of color. When this work is really operational in a system, all of those pieces of data also move for children of color, without a doubt. seen it in my career. So,
Thank you for that,
that's,
Deirdre.
you can't, it's hard to directly tie that to a specific goal in a school. But by golly, we better expect to see those data begin to move once we're really doing this work, in addition to what students are reporting to us in student panels and on student surveys.
I completely agree. Thank you for bringing that. It's student connectedness, right? Student engagement. How many kids are in clubs? Those things are going to speak volumes also, but that is going to be a great thing to really investigate through that disproportionality of data.
I think Ms. Solis has a question.
So I know this work is not easy. It's not easy at all. And I know that we wouldn't be here if we didn't have the board in place that we do, and the leadership with Dr. Pilch and people like Stacy and Jesse really leading this work and it trickling down to our schools and those leaders at those schools. This is monumental in this district, and we are doing work that should be happening in other entities that are around us in our community, and it's not. So I really want to commend you all for putting in this energy and effort to do this work. I think, I've seen just recently an incident from just 10 years ago make a comeback, and kids talk about how that incident 10 years ago affected them, and it still affects them. And so the impact of what we can really do with kiddos is going to be lifelong. It's not even going to be just within their high school years. This will be lifelong. And hopefully all of us will learn through this. I know there's things that I can learn around the LGBTQ issues. I feel like I get it, and then there's something new added. So there's always more for me to learn. So I hope that you pass that information on to us and let us learn with you. I don't have any questions. I just really want to commend you all for your heart and soul in this work. Again, I know it's not easy, but we all know that it's really, really important. It's uncomfortable sometimes. It makes people uncomfortable. These are sometimes tough discussions to have. And there just hasn't really been a lot of safe places in this community to really do this work and have those tough conversations. So I just really want to commend us as a district. I know that having Jesse in his position and the way he does this work so gracefully really makes a difference. He has this graceful way of pushing, which is probably opposite of me. So I really I commend Jesse for the way that he does this work. And Jesse, I know this is not easy for you to come into such a wide system that has been doing things a certain way for a certain amount of time. And you've been doing this work for decades. So for you to have the patience and just the love that you have for staff and for our students to do this work and be committed to this, I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Ms. Mueller, you had a question or comment?
So I had a comment and then just a question, and maybe I wasn't tracking very carefully, but I do want to say I'm very impressed that you have partnered with community partners, especially Stephen at UNC, to do the Safe Zone training. I've actually gone through that same Safe Zone training myself. Stephen's a colleague of mine, and it is important work. It's challenging work, and so I really appreciate you reaching out and branching out to experts in the community who can do that kind of training with the staff at all the different schools. The one question I guess I would have is it looks like it's you're not focused just on really important discussions and concepts involving racism, but also expanding out to implicit bias in other areas, including LGBTQ, bullying. And so I guess the question is getting those student stakeholders involved, and how are you going about sort of trying to recruit them? And I'm thinking about other communities even broader, like students who identify as having a disability, and having some of those conversations. Is that at the school level that kind of thing is occurring?
I would say so. That's what's great about building capacity and ensuring that our social workers, our counselors, and other stakeholders across the system that are the immediate responders to our kids, right? If you listen deep enough, they're going to tell you what they need and where they're at. That's going to be the most essential data that we gather is from really what are our folks hearing at the school level. And from there, you begin to develop, how do we begin to address not only the concerns that are raising, but how do we empower the kids that are involved in these realities that they're experiencing? For instance, Brentwood is launching a GSA club. I look at the work that'll be taking place at ECA. I look at other areas and schools that are really focusing on these intersectionalities. So really, it's really listening. It's amazing what a simple question can mean to a child if he just asks that, right? I always think about, how do you bring in student voice to a situation? Oftentimes it's just simply asking in a sincere manner. Thank you for that, Pepper.
I just have to say, I'm really proud of your team and all of the school building teams for doing this work. It is hard work, and I really applaud you for taking it on and meeting these objectives. I'm actually very impressed with the level of training that is increased every year. So thank you for taking that on.
No, I appreciate that. And I too am inspired to see our first two Equifies with their school equity teams. It was it's just amazing to see 80 folks log in on a Saturday for 7 hours and really begin to do that work. It's not many folks want to log in on a Saturday if they've been logging all day, right? And they've done it, and they continue to do it, and they look forward for the other parts to come across.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out really quick on that note too, and thinking about with Amy Zuloff and Leah Sanford as well as Nate on this call, the engagement of the folks that in that Equify training, and not only their personal engagement, but the capacity that was built across having many of these folks engage in sharing and participating and giving of themselves into this work on that day and the follow-up session that already occurred. It was incredible. It was just really amazing to watch and to listen and to learn from and to be a part of. There was so much energy. And at a time when we're all fairly exhausted, people were all day long engaged in that training and continue to be. And so just very, very pleased to see that. And Jesse and his leadership is at the pinnacle of that. And it's because of your leadership, Jesse, that this is where we're at right now today. So it's pretty
Jesse,
incredible.
is this the training we'll do at Winograd K8, the Equify, or is that different training we'll do? What are we using for that? Do you know?
That'll be Introduction to Courageous Conversation. So that'll be the Beyond Diversity training from Glenn Singleton. So
I think that is the training I think we're thinking of for the Board of Education. Yes. Possibly. We want to see how this goes, doing it virtually with Winograd. We want to see how it goes. And then that's something that we would possibly like to offer to our Board of Education as well. And I know some of you are interested in that, and we probably need to get it added to the strategic plan.
Yes.
Mr. Talley has a question.
My question was actually pretty much exactly what Pepper asked, is how are we going to engage students, or how are we going to get their buy-in? But since that was already answered, I guess I just want to say that I really appreciate this work. I could sit here and talk about SEL probably all night with all of you. But like many of you, I have a family and a crying baby in the background, and that I have to tend to as well. But I do just want to say that I really appreciate all this work and the intentional work that is happening. And it sparks my interest even more when I hear that we are talking more about the LGBTQ community. Nothing is more awkward, and I can speak firsthand, nothing is more awkward than having a conversation with somebody when they ask me how my wife is doing. And so I think just being able to have that common language of not making it awkward. I don't know. I guess I don't know how to put it, but just those intentional conversations and trainings for our staff and for our students. So that way we do know that somebody isn't different. Somebody just has a different lifestyle, and that doesn't make them any less of a human being. And that we need to treat everyone equally, and we need to treat everyone fairly. And so I really appreciate all this work, and I look forward to hearing how it's going and hopefully participating in some of it in the future. I think you're very lucky to sit through a training with Stephen. Stephen is a friend of Jacob and I, my husband and I. So we we know them very well. And so I think that you'll be very happy with the training that we received from Stephen.
Definitely, Stephen's great. He's been able to do a couple of trainings for our counselors already. But to add a little bit more to the student voice piece too, is that we'll be working with Greeley West pretty closely. As we begin to have more ability to have engagement with students, we're looking at doing something called SOAR, which is also a part of Courageous Conversations, to bring in students and really offer them the same type of trainings that our adults have had, with partnerships with the adults too. So it's going to be a great way to co-generate dialogue amongst students. So we're hoping that the spring has some of that opportunity for us to share with possibly 60 to 80 students and some staff members. So thank you for that question, Ray.
Are there any other questions or comments from board members?
Mr. Matthews or President Matthews, I'll just say, I don't know if you saw, Ms. Pappas had to sign off. She's dealing with something, and I know she cares deeply about all of this, and she would have favorable words to share if she was able to do that.
Okay. Yes, she certainly would. Well, if there aren't any other comments, I'll just echo what everyone else has said, and thank you for your work. It's difficult work. It's important work. And as we say so often, leadership makes a difference, right? So whether it's at an administrative or a central administration level with Stacy and Jesse and what you're doing, or building level, Nate and Leah, Amy, with what you're doing, we appreciate the leadership, and it's the only way that this work gets done. And so, thank you for your time and your commitment and the courage to ask difficult questions and have difficult conversations and just take on this challenging work. And you too, Dr. Pilch. We should thank you for your leadership always.
No, I'm glad you started thanking the teachers, because here's the deal. Where this work really happens is with classroom teachers and administrators in buildings. It doesn't, we've got to be trained well at the district level, but we aren't out there on the front line with kids every day. They are. And they are the ones who are leading their peers. So thank you for saying it, President Matthews. And I'm so glad you brought staff from the building here tonight with you, because they're the ones fighting the good fight out there, and it's exciting to see. I'm really excited how far we've moved in just a few years.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch. I think our last item, that'll wrap up our administrative portion, but Christina, Ms. Crane, do we have anybody signed up for the public? Anybody still waiting to speak to us in the public participation, not regarding an agenda item?
No, we do not have anyone.
All right. Well, that's all that we have for tonight. If you made it all the way with us, certainly you got a lot of great information and understand better what we're doing as a district. But thank you for hanging in with us on this snowy, cold Monday night. And this meeting is adjourned.